Welcome to the Psychology World podcast with me, Connor Whiteley, psychology student and international best-selling psychology author of over 30 psychology books, bringing you the latest psychology news, fascinating psychology topics and more each week. If you want to learn more, then please check out connorwhiteley.net/books. And don't forget to like and subscribe to the YouTube video or follow on your favourite podcast app. And here's the show. Hi everyone, I'm on episode 276 of the Psychology World podcast with me, Connor Whiteley. And today's episode is on what should couples talk about before moving in together. And it is the 28th of June 2024 as I record this. Now, in case my voice sounds a little bit off, I do have a cold and I'm coming to the tail end of it. But it's been really bad this week, so I've been a bit ill. So today's episode is absolutely brilliant, and this was a lot of fun to produce and put together. Because me and my best friend we're moving in together tomorrow. I've been doing tons of things for that this week, and the research paper we actually focus on in today's episode really does get us thinking about what should we do when we move in together, what sort of conversations we should have to decrease conflict and make it an enjoyable experience that lasts as long as possible. So it was a brilliant episode. I really enjoyed it. I learned quite a lot about it, and also in the content part of today's episode, because I recorded it on Tuesday, when I wasn't at work, thankfully. I did mention in the podcast episode that I didn't know what my best friend's routine was, but we spoke about it, and it's fine. It's definitely very different to mine, but I don't. But it won't cause any major clashes, though. But if it did, it's still something that's absolutely critical to understand and talk about. So you got that to look forward to in the content part of today's episode. So moving on to the psychology news section, we're reading from the British Psychological Society Research Digest, and the first one is a lot of fun. Experiences rather than stuff fosters connection to humanity. We live in lonely times. Though we all have our ways of getting through, many of us turn to buying things as a coping strategy for loneliness, a fact that corporations are all too aware of. So much so, in fact, the research has shown that since the pandemic began, there's been an uptick in brands advertising their products as going to attain well-being. Whilst it's easy to say you won't find a company at the bottom of a receipt, research has shown a link between purchases we make when we're lonely and a sense of connection. Further studies have also suggested that experiential purposes are much better at dispelling negative, disconnected feelings than others. Writing in the Journal of Behavioral Decision Making, Tim Kumar and colleagues share further evidence that we may want to prioritize experiences, not belongings, when coming to retail therapy. Through their latest experiments, they find that experiential purchases not only provide more of a sense of a connection to those around us than the material ones, but can make us feel more connected to humanity as a whole. So personally, I'm not the sort of person to do retail therapy, but I think there are larger points here. But because if you take very, very oversimplified social psychology here, our social groups do tend to be based on our shared interests, our shared identity, and basically our shared memories. So that when we're spending time with people, when we're doing fun stuff with them, then that really helps us to strengthen those connections and strengthen that in-group identification and that in-group membership. So that's always really good though. So that's the theoretical basis. If there's any social psychologists listening, I'm sure you could write an entire essay on on the social psychology behind these findings. but it's late at night and I'm ill, so I'm not going to do that. And I'm a clinical psychology master's student, not social psych. But from my own experience, I always prefer to do stuff with my friends and my family compared to just like getting stuff. Because the problem with stuff is that yeah, it's nice, but thankfully I'm privileged enough that if there's something I really want, and there's not that much that I really want, I can buy it for myself. So I prefer doing that stuff. I prefer creating memories and spending time with the people that I love. So to me, that's what's important because I do feel more connected with them because of it, and it's something that we can reflect on for years to come. So that's my own personal experience. So the second one is older people face barriers to talking therapy. According to Independent Age, around 75% of people aged 65 plus have experienced significant anxiety or low mood. The older adults are also less likely to be referred to therapy. One study found that even younger adults were 80% more likely to receive therapy. This underrepresentation is also present in talking therapies, formerly known as IAP, which in the UK it used to stand for Improved Access to Psychological Therapy. So this was the NHS pathway for treatment for anxiety and depression, where older adults represent just 5.1% of referrals. This isn't just because doctors overlook older people's mental health issues. However, some people simply choose not to take up referrals. Writing in the cognitive behavioral therapist, Rachel Puster and team paint a complex picture as to why older adults might not act talking therapies and offer suggestions about what we can do to increase the take up. So even though whenever I do these psychology news sections, I don't actually read these before I record the podcast episode, I will definitely be reading that afterwards. This is a real issue that we've got to solve. Well, so I think part of it, and again, this is just based on my own experience with the older members of my family, they do tend to think that psychology, mental health, of course, it's not real. Well, because they believe in all the myths about psychology, that psychology is not a science, it can't be that useful. Only like snowflakes go to have mental health therapy, and on and on and on. So yes, I think that's part of the reason about why they don't want to take up these referrals. I also think that because of their generation, and again, yes, so these are just generalizations, but I know from talking with certain older people in my family that yes, they do just say that I don't want to go to see a mental health professional because for my generation that means I'm crazy or I'm insane. Of course, that is absolute utter rubbish, but it's what that generation believes. And again, it just means that we need to continue the work on destigmatizing it. And then there are other more systemic barriers, which we've also got to address. So there's definitely a lot to do, and definitely check out that write up at the BPS Research Digest website. And the last one is elsewhere on the web. Professor David Nutt speaks with Contra Minds podcast this week, getting into a whole host of issues pertaining to alcohol addiction and beating depression. This episode gets into his own research on developing a synthetic alcohol, which aims to make the relaxing aspects of the drinking available without the associated health risks, as well as the use of psychedelics in treating mental health conditions. Okay, so this I think was quite an interesting one just to pick up because a synthetic alcohol, one, that's a very interesting idea, and to be honest, I mean like we need it because if basically everything was alcohol free or if everything was a synthetic alcohol, then one it'd be interesting to see the long term health implications, both from any potential negative standpoints because it's new and it's just something interesting to say though. But if we can have an alcohol that actually doesn't have negative health outcomes, then that would be fascinating because one, we would see a massive decrease in the health related outcomes related to drinking, which would save the economy millions, no, probably billions, because the NHS wouldn't have any drunk accidents to deal with. There would basically be no DUIs. Of course, I'm talking about a world where normal alcohol was eradicated, which, let's face it, would never ever happen. But still, though, I mean, like, it's very interesting to think about. But then also, would there be a drinking boom? Boom, there would, because I myself, I don't drink because of the negative health implications. And to be honest, I don't like the taste. But if there was an alcohol where I wouldn't receive any negative effects, then I think that's something I would be interested in. So that would be a very interesting application for the future, and something quite weird to think about, though. And also, using psychedelics to treat mental health. I think we've spoken about that briefly on the podcast. I know it is sort of popular in certain circles, so I might do an episode in the future about it because I'm because I don't know that much about it, and what little I do is either fact with one or two myths slipped into it, or to be fair, if anyone asked me about psychedelics, I wouldn't be confident enough to give them an answer. So I guess for my own research, I better look it up at some point. So a future podcast episode for sure. So I hope you enjoy the psychology news section. So let's move on to the personal update. So, moving on to the personal update. This week has been absolutely brilliant and absolutely insane because I have been doing so much. I've not stopped all week, which I love, but it's also some of the things I've been dealing with which have just been a bit, oh my god, are you serious? So, so basically, this week has been working a lot, which I don't mind. I have no problem with that whatsoever. Outreach work is really fun because I've been doing like World Languages Day with Year 8 students. So that's 12 and 13-year-olds. So we would teach them different languages. There was this absolutely brilliant French drama class, which was really fun. And the woman doing it, she was amazing. And I love French, and the woman was really impressed with my French. And I mean, like, it was just such a fun day. And then I was being introduced to the Ukrainian language, and there was another one. Because one of the members of the staff, which I really like, she's a Norwegian, so she was teaching us some Norwegian. So brilliant day. There were tons of other sessions, so I had a lot of fun. And then I was doing some forensic science stuff and lots of other stuff. So that was really, really good. Also, though, I've been dealing with a lot of psychology society stuff. So far, international audience in the UK, at our universities, we have things called societies, which are adult social clubs formed around a particular interest. And the Psychology Society does not have one. No, sorry. The School of Psychology does not have a society which is student led at the moment. So, Psychology Society doesn't exist. So, we formed our application, we sent it to the student union, it got rejected because a society had already been produced. And they had their application approved just before us, which was really weird because we've had backing from the head of school, lots of others really high-ranking members of our staff, though. So we had to deal with this situation, and that's all that I'm going to say on it because it took so much time. Lots of details were discussed, and lots of different things came out of it. So it was a really interesting week in terms of all I wanted to do was sit down at the end of like an 8 hour shift. Oh, no, some of it was like 9 hours long, not even including driving. So, yes, it's been a chaotic week, lots to do. Lots to do there, and I'm looking forward to next week when things calm down. But it's been a really fun week. And tomorrow I'm moving in with my best friend, so we're going to live in Canterbury, which is going to be really fun. It's going to be closer to the uni, and it means I can do a lot more stuff down there, which is definitely going to be entertaining at times. So moving is definitely chaotic because I'm literally surrounded by boxes because I've been having to deal with everything and I've been working so much. I've not had time to pack much, so I've done lots of packing tonight. I'm going to record. I'm going to finish recording this, pack up my computer stuff, and there will be a podcast episode produced by Monday. If you're listening to this on Monday, well, when this is released at 5 a.m., you know I would have been successful. I hope I am. So, as always, I always love to know your thoughts and feelings on today's episode. So, as always, you can email me at connorwhiteley@connorwhiteley.net. You can always leave comments out of share notes at connorwhiteley.net/podcast. And you can always tweet on Twitter at sci-fi whiteley or leave a comment on the Facebook post or LinkedIn page. I always love to hear from all of you because it really helps make the podcast feel more like a conversation. And today's episode has been sponsored by Psychology of Relationships, the social psychology of friendships, romantic relationships, and more. So this is, of course, a brilliant sponsor for today's episode because we're talking about couples moving in together. But let's go back, actually, first of all. Why do we actually form relationships? How do we do it? What's the biological, psychological, and social factors that actually make us fall in love or even form a friendship? So, because there's a massive overlap. But also, how do we have a good communication? How do relationships change and end? Which hopefully, because if you move into it together, that won't happen. But if it does, why? What are the psychological models that we have to explain it? Also, what's the theories of sexuality and homosexuality? So why do we form a attraction? Why do we form attraction to the people that we are? Basically, why are people straight and why are people gay? The theories and the psychological research is really interesting and I cannot recommend it enough. And stepping away from relationships, both friendships and romantic ones, let's talk about prosocial behaviour. What is the bystander effect? Why do people not help when someone clearly needs it? And so many more absolutely brilliant topics which I flat out love. This is a great book. I've got a lot of time for this one, and people really, really do love it. So that is Psychology of Relationships, the Social Psychology of Friendships, Romantic Relationships, and more. Available from all major ebook retailers, and you can get the paperback and hardback version from Amazon, local bookstore, or local library if you requested. And if you want the AI narrated audiobook, now you can at selected audiobook retailers like Spotify, Kobo, Google Play, and Barnes & Noble. Or you can get it at selected library systems like Overdrive, Baker & Taylor, and Biblioteca. So, whilst buying books helps to support the creation and the editing of the podcast, my time is sponsored by my wonderful patrons. And as always, a massive thank you to my patrons. Your support shows that you like the show and you want it to continue. And if you want access to tons of great rewards, now you can at patreon.com/The Psychology World Podcast. Or if you want to support the podcast on a one-off basis, now you can at buymeacoffee.com/Con Whiteley. So that's enough of the personal update. Let's move on to the content part of today's episode. So I'm moving on to the content part of today's episode. So we're going to be talking about what should couples talk about before moving into together. This is a really fun podcast episode. I flat out loved it. There's a lot of great content here and a lot of absolutely brilliant questions which we all really, really need to think about. So let's dive into it. I firmly believe that all the couples should sit down and have a detailed conversation about cohabitation before they live together. This is a major step in any relationship. And to use a close friendship example, as that's all I know, it's very different seeing your best friends for a few times a week compared to living and being around each other 24/7. So, for the sake of the relationship, you simply just can't go into it. You will need to think about if this is right for you or not. Granted, when it comes to this sort of thing, because of my past, I am an extremely cautious person. In terms of relationships, a couple wanting to move into together signs a desire for greater commitment and intimacy. So it's important that the partners have conversations that help the other to understand their preferences, expectations, as well as perceptions of their relationship. This is something I needed to understand a lot more about my best friend in terms of perception because I'm used to getting dropped and abandoned by people I'm close with, so I need a fair amount of reassurance, and my best friend was the same a few years ago, so they understood. As a result, Brown and All 2023 wrote a paper about the topics that couples needed to talk about before they moved into together in the form of questions. This helps the couple to talk about communication, household rules, and relationship negotiations to help keep conflict at a minimum. What are the relationship negotiation questions? When it comes to Brown and All 2023, they suggest couples talk about four main areas of their relationship, so each partner can understand the other person more. These areas and questions are: purpose of cohabitation. How permanent is the pre-cohabitation agreement? Is there an end goal as a couple? What are some of the problems that moving into together may trigger or exacerbate? How will we share and organise the new space? Should we share our individual belongings or purchase new ones? Does this location suit us both, e.g., proximity to family, friends, or work? How do we agree on the definition of concepts such as cohabitation, infidelity, monogamy, household rules, and shared labour? Personally, I think these are really good questions because these purpose questions help you to understand each other more and you can get ahead of some of the problems or concerns you both have, as well as your partner's answers can be very reassuring. For example, when me and my best friends were talking about moving into together, I found it really reassuring that we spoke about some of the issues that might pop up, like them and their relationship would be a potential issue for me because of my child abuse and sexual assault, so we spoke about it. This is just something that we're going to have to manage when it pops up, and I've recommitted to working on it and trying to find my own relationship in the future. Of course, that is still difficult being a sexual assault survivor. In addition, it was really reassuring that we both agreed on just talking to each other if something pops up, and talking about location, household rules, and how we would manage chores was useful too. Overall, this isn't about finding reasons not to live together. Instead, this is about finding out more information so you know more about your relationship, so you can decrease the chance of any major conflict. Sex and romance. When or how frequency to discuss sex and intimacy, be it masturbation, pornography, contraception, frequency of sex, freedom to explore desires and fancies, getting tested for sexually transmitted diseases, or open relationships. What are the rules for discussing sex in front of other people? Do we have the same expectations when it comes to date nights or holidays, including where we go, what to wear, and who pays? Thankfully, this is an area me and my best friend definitely don't have to deal with, but I still think it's important for couples since it helps put everything into perspective and it allows you to know exactly what the other person wants. Culture, family, and religion. how to address family issues, how involved are we going to be in our own and each other's families, which cultural traditions to share, when to talk about socio-political issues like the way race, gender and disabilities affects our relationships. How important is spirituality/religion to each of us and our families of origin? This is a critical section because you do need to know this stuff. If the other person is a devout member of a religion and you are not, then you need to know this and what that entails. This could be a deal breaker for you, so you will have to come to a compromise that means your partner can practice without the religion constantly being forced down your throat. Also, if you both have different positions on socio-political issues, then this is important to talk about. You can still have a great relationship even if you don't agree on everything. But the key is to respect each other and know when to talk openly about your beliefs. Thankfully, me and my best friend agree on 99% of stuff politically and socially, so that isn't a problem. Yet, the one topic we do disagree on, I know not to talk about unless it's the right time or place. Granted, this isn't a rule, this is just something that I want to do to decrease conflict. Ultimately, I think this set of questions comes back to respecting your partner as a separate person with their own life and belief system. That isn't a bad thing, and often a few differences makes a relationship more interesting. Individual and shared identities. Do we plan to have separate spaces in the house for some me time? How to maintain our individual and shared time, goals, hobbies, and other relationships, like friends or co-workers. Continuing on our mini theme of respecting your partner, these two questions confirm that even more. It is important that you find time for yourself, your hobbies, your interests, and your friends because you can't be around each other 24/7. That would lead to burnout. You would get sick and tired of each other, and it wouldn't be good for the relationship at all. This is why having these conversations and making sure you both want alone time away from each other is important. In terms of me and my best friend moving into it together, this is something we're sort of aware of, since I have a business, my writing, and my podcasting that takes up a lot of my time. Also, me and my best friend have outreach work at our university, so that can be done together or alone. As well as my best friend has their Dungeons and Dragons campaigns, their own friends, and they want to spend the summer building a gaming PC from scratch. Therefore, we will be spending a lot of time together, especially in the evenings, but we aren't going to be around each other and attached to the hip 24/7, something that will be really good for our relationship going forward. What about household rule questions? This is certainly an area where a lot of conflict can pop up, so these questions are certainly important and critical to think about. What about chores? What is a flexible and fair way of splitting up the chores? How to make decisions about grocery shopping, cooking, doing laundry, cleaning, and outside maintenance. This is even more important when it comes to student housing, to be fair, because what me and my best friend are going to do is there will be a small whiteboard with a list of chores, and one of our names will be next to each chore. It's that person's job to do that chore each week, and then we swap each week too. That's fair, and I don't have a problem with that method. I know my parents are a little more gender based because of their age, so my mum does the more typical female jobs around the house, and my dad does the typical male jobs. Yet when I move out, I know my dad is going to have to start doing the stuff that I did, like the food bin, dishwasher, hanging out the washing on the washing line from time to time, and a few other pieces. Basically, just talk to your partner and work this stuff out now before you move into it together. Believe me, you do not want to be in an argument about chores, not being done, and someone seeing the other person in the relationship as lazy, those arguments never go well. What about debt, budgeting, and finances? A very attractive topic at times. Not. Do we have similar views regarding spending and saving, financial contribution, making shared purchases, bank accounts, debt, and systems of managing finances? Should we make a budget? What are our financial resources? What about recurring bills and expenses? When to revisit our financial goals? Well, this is basically no void for student housing because everything is the person's own responsibility. When it comes to relationships, this is important because you're together and financial decisions impact both of you. And because these conversations can be so detailed, so dependent on your upbringing, your attitude towards money, and a whole bunch of other factors, all I will say is just make sure you have these conversations. I think money can make or break a relationship, so please don't let money issues mess up yours. What about pets? Does either of us have any pet allergies? Who will be responsible for costs and daily care of pets? Again, similar to money, this is a needy conversation because if one of you really wants a dog or cat and the other is allergic, then of course this is something that you need to know now because you can't really do it. Like, you don't want to kill your partner off. Also, if you want a pet but the other doesn't, this will be disappointing, and it's healthy to know why so you can understand where the other person is coming from. For example, my mum would flat out love a dog, but my dad seriously doesn't. Mainly because of the cost, the price of the actual dog, and my parents like going away for weekends at a time, so the lifestyle doesn't always accommodate a dog. It was this little explanation that helped my mum understand why my dad was so against this, so it prevented this disagreement ever becoming an issue in the relationship. What about guests? How long or frequently can we have guests over? How much notice is required? I think this is an answer that will change depending on the level of your relationship. For example, if you're a relatively newer couple, then you may be more forgiving of surprise guests. But if you're married, you do need to tell the other with notice that guests are coming and staying round. In terms of me and my best friend, we often make fun of our tenancy agreement because the legal contract specifically says something along the lines of we are limited to 2 guests a month, and they cannot stay for more than 2 nights in a row, and they cannot stay for more than 4 nights in a month, or something stupid like that. The agreement we mentioned in passing was that the other can always bring friends over as long as they tell the other. And if my best friend brings their partner over, then I do want notice because we'll probably have to talk about it a little. Not because I don't want my best friend in a relationship, I seriously do, and I do just want them to be happy, but because of personal stuff that will pop up, I just want to be prepared. Ultimately, this question about guests is simply being respectful, because if you're living with someone, this is their house too. You cannot treat it like you're the only person who lives there, because that is unfair. You just talk to your partner about guests out of respect for them. What about transportation? How to budget for transportation expenses, be it public transportation, renting a car, or maintaining a vehicle we own. And of course, how to share a car. I sort of understanding the wording of this question, but I also don't like it. I don't really think budgeting for transportation is a major concern depending on where you live. I think more of a question is about the shared car if you only have one. I think that needs to be sorted out so conflict doesn't arise because by one partner not feeling that they can use it if needed, and the other partner doesn't get annoyed because the other used their car without permission. I've already said to my best friends that I will drive them to outreach events if we're both working, and I'll drive them about if it's local or whatever. For example, I'll take them to shops, probably the train station, and whatever, if it's convenient to me. I'll also take them to the university most of the time, to some extent, because it's a 5 minute drive away. And I wanted to have this conversation so my friend knows I'm happy to help them out, and they don't have to stress about getting on public transport or whatever. What about communication questions? The final set of questions looks at how to manage communication in the relationship when you move in together. Questions about rules of communication. When do we discuss relationship issues? Are we planning to use regular check-ins, or if needed, conflict resolution techniques or psychotherapy? So conflict is always going to pop up, so please plan for it. So you have a plan of action to sort any issues out. Don't let these issues go unresolved, because this isn't healthy in a relationship, and it can be the small things adding up over time that causes the relationship to utterly fail, even if you promise each other just to talk about any issues or conflicts. Or when the other annoys you, that's what me and my best friends have agreed, then it's better than nothing. Questions about communication needs and styles. Should we set aside time to talk about our day and to schedule time to discuss major relationship issues? When bothered by an issue or feeling upset, how will each partner communicate these feelings? What verbal or non-verbal cues to look for? This connects to the last group of questions because it's important you resolve and talk about conflict, but you also need to know how to talk and communicate these issues so you can both effectively deal with the issue. Questions about social media and privacy. What is private? How do we differentiate privacy from secrecy? How much time are we going to spend on social media? What are the expectations regarding posting about our relationship on social media? Now, this is an interesting one because I never would have thought about this topic and these questions, but I can understand why these are important, since it is really annoying when you're spending time with the other person and the other person is constantly on their phone or social media. In the early days of Facebook, my mum used to do this a lot, and it was annoying. And if one person in the relationship doesn't want to be on social media or advertise the relationship a lot, then you need to know this to avoid conflict. Logistical questions. What is each person's daily routine? How do we share our personal and professional schedules? This is something me and my best friend actually need to talk about. I'm staying over Wednesday, so I'll probably try and talk about it with them. Because we all work fine together and living together will be great, but we have reasonably different routines, and routines are important to us because we're both autistic. For example, I get up at around 8 a.m. I try 7 a.m., but that doesn't really happen these days. I do 6 hours of work throughout the day with longish breaks in between so I can do my steps, watch online courses, and whatever. Then I'm normally in bed by 10 p.m. Okay, I'm lying in bed doing Duolingo and reading. My best friend gets up at 11 a.m. or 12 p.m., even though they recently said that's early for them. I sort of think more 2 p.m. is more their thing, but they don't go to bed until midnight or even 2 a.m. in the morning. I cannot do that. I'm too old to do that these days. However, it's just useful to think about daily routines and how you might need to adapt them now you're living together. This helps to decrease any conflict and it allows you both to keep living your own lives without you feeling like you're getting lost in the relationship. What about LGBT plus issues? Of course, these are just if they're relevant to your situation. How out each of us? Might there be negative legal, financial, or social consequences to tell others about your cohabitation? How to manage or reduce the negative consequences? If this is relevant to your situation, then these are probably some of the most important questions you will talk about, and that's all I'll say about this generally. With me being gay and my best friend being bisexual, both of us are fully out to our friends and family. This isn't going to be something we need to hide or talk about when our parents. This isn't going to be something to hide or not talk about when our family come to visit us. That's reassuring, but equally, there is some stuff we know not to tell the family of the other. For example, I don't think I'd be allowed to tell my best friend's parents any details of their relationship when they visit, and I'm not allowed to tell my best friend's partner about my best friend's past relationships because he's sensitive to that sort of stuff. So just talk, be honest, and be considerate towards the other person. Goals and plans are questions. And including this one, there's only 2 more sections. What are each person's plans and goals, be they related to physical health, mental health, emotional well-being, or finances and career development? What are our future plans? Those questions are rather interesting because they're ones I never would have normally thought about. Part of this is obviously just down to me never being in a relationship, but when couples move into together, these are really important questions to consider. They mean you can help each other move towards your goals, you can grow as a couple and individuals, and again, this helps you to define yourself and your own individual identity so you don't have to lose yourself in the relationship. And if your partner has very different goals and plans to yourself, then talk about it. See if these are deal breakers. See if you can compromise and how you can help each other. Exit strategy questions. Do we have a plan for the possibility of relationship dissolution, including ways of dealing with legal issues? How might we split the assets, liabilities, and debt? What about the marital home, e.g., mortgage? Well, that's always a fun topic. Finally, whilst no one ever wants to talk about exit strategies and relationship breakdown, these are good to think about. So when moving into together, since moving into together adds some legal considerations like the mortgage, the rent, the bills, and more. So you need to know what happens if you decide to break up. Conclusion. Ultimately, when it comes to moving into together, a lot of couples never take the time to have an open, honest conversation about the topics that would help them to understand their partner's views, plans, preferences, desires, and routines, and so on. However, if you don't have these conversations, then living together can be very stressful and filled with conflict. You might need to address sexual satisfaction, division of chores, budgeting, communication styles and needs, as well as what to do if living together doesn't work out. As a result, when you want to live with your partner, definitely set some time aside to chat about the topics we've discussed in this episode, and see these as opportunities to improve and develop your listening skills, as well as improve how you express yourself, your planning, perspective taking, and improve your intimacy building. These are all critical skills for healthy romantic relationships. If these topics cause you a lot of anxiety, and if you can't find solutions or come to an agreement, then maybe consider couples therapy. We've covered this a lot on the podcast before, so please check out the backlist. On the home, even though me and my best friend aren't dating, I'm still really looking forward to it because it'd be fun. We'll have a great time together, and it will be a massive improvement in both our lives. But I'll admit, because of my past, I was scared of it, I was nervous, and I thought this was impossible at first. However, we took the time to talk about it over the course of a few months, and I'm neglecting the fact that we got a house 4 days after confirming it. Then we had these conversations. Do not do that when you're dating. And I'm a lot more relaxed now, and I'm really looking forward to it. Give yourself and your relationship the best chance of survival and having fun whilst living together. Just talk, communicate, and respect each other. That really is the key to happy cohabitation. So I really hope that you enjoyed today's episode and you got something out of it. I know that I did, because this was a lot of fun to put together. It was definitely a slightly longer episode than I intended, but it's still useful, it's still helpful, and it's a social psychology topic, something that we just don't normally think about on the podcast too often. And if you're currently living with your loved one, or if you're thinking about it in the future, then maybe think about some of these questions. Or if you want to be randomly fun, maybe just walk past your partner, just throw out one of these questions, see what happens. Actually, yeah, I might do that with my best friend, to be fair, and just see what happens. Probably throw them quite badly. So if you know someone who would enjoy today's episode, please share it with them. I'm always really grateful when you wonderful people help spread the word about the podcast. And if you want to learn more, definitely check out Social Psychology of Relationships, the Social Psychology of Friendships, Romantic Relationships, and more, available in all visual places. And if you want the AI narrated audiobook, then you can get that at selected audiobook retailers, including Spotify. And if you want to become a patron of the show and get access to tons of great rewards, now you can at patreon.com/the Psychology World Podcast. Or if you want to support the podcast on a one-off basis, now you can at buymeacoffee.com/Connor Whiteley. Now, I've been recording for quite a while and my throat's really dry, so I need to go. So have a great day, everyone, and I'll see you next time. Thanks for listening today. I hope you found it helpful. Please remember to like the video and subscribe to the YouTube channel and follow the podcast on your favourite podcast app. And if you wanted to learn more, then please check out the backlist of the podcast episodes or my books at connorwhiteley.net. So have a great day, and I'll see you next time.